This podcast is brought to you by The Senior Techie, a source of information for seniors and others about technology.
Glad to be here.
So, if I asked you to picture the founder of a fast-growing tech startup right now, who comes to mind? You'd probably imagine like a 22-year-old in a hoodie, right?
Oh, for sure. Probably downing energy drinks in a college dorm somewhere.
Yeah, that is the stereotype. But if you look at the actual numbers, you would be completely wrong. I mean, the most successful new founders in America right now aren't college dropouts. They are actually in their 70s and 80s.
It's wild. It is a profound structural change in our economy. And, well, exploring that shift is really the mission of today's episode of the Senior Techie podcast.
Right.
We are going to look at how older Americans are fundamentally redefining their final decades. They are launching incredibly successful tech companies, and we want to unpack why. Because their lifetime of experience, all those decades spent navigating the workforce, is actually their single biggest competitive advantage right now.
Which completely flips the traditional script upside down. We have this cultural assumption that innovation belongs exclusively to the youth.
We really do.
It's like thinking only rookies can win the championship when the veterans are the ones who actually wrote the playbook.
That is a brilliant way to frame it. The visual stereotype of Silicon Valley, the young genius building an empire overnight, it's incredibly persistent.
Yeah, the media loves it.
But when we look at the hard data provided by the Senior Techie, that stereotype just shatters. We are looking at a demographic movement that is quietly reshaping entire industries.
Wait, I want to pause there and actually dig into this data because some of these numbers completely broke my mental model.
Oh, they're fascinating. Let's hear them.
So the Senior Techie highlights that right now, roughly 30% of Americans in their 70s are running their own businesses.
30%.
Yeah. That is about 1.3 million people. Just picture that. That is roughly the entire population of Dallas, Texas, composed entirely of people in their 70s running companies. And it doesn't stop there. Roughly 27% of Americans in their 80s are also working for themselves.
It really forces you to rethink what those decades are supposed to look like. To put that into perspective, the self-employment rate for people in their 70s is nearly double the rate for people in their 60s.
Wow, double. That is a huge jump.
It is. We are not talking about a fringe curiosity here, or just a tiny handful of highly motivated outliers. The U.S. Census Bureau's annual business survey shows that people aged 55 and older account for 52.3% of all U.S. business owners.
Okay, so more than half.
Yes, and baby boomers alone make up 54% of that pie.
Which is staggering when you consider that the 55 and older age group only makes up, 21% of the general population?
That's right. They are vastly overrepresented in the entrepreneurial space.
And from what I read, this isn't just some weird post-pandemic blip, right?
Not at all. The Kauffman Foundation noted that the share of new entrepreneurs aged 55 to 64 jumped from 14.8% back in 1996 to 22.8% in 2021.
Yeah.
So we are looking at a long-term structural change in who is actually building the foundation of our economy.
And here is where the data gets truly fascinating for me. It is not just that they are starting businesses, it's that they are exceptionally good at it.
Spot on. Researchers from MIT and Northwestern University analyzed over 2 million companies. That is a massive data set.
Oh, wow, 2 million. So you can't really argue with the sample size.
You really can't. And they found that a startup founder in their 50s is twice as likely to succeed as a founder under the age of 30.
Twice as likely.
Yes. Furthermore, the average age of a founder at the fastest growing companies is 45. That means a significant portion of the founders driving the most aggressive economic growth didn't even launch their companies until well into their 50s.
That is such a stark contrast to the cultural narrative we are fed. I mean, Mark Zuckerberg famously said, young people are just smarter.
He did say that.
But the data says a 60-year-old is actually a much safer bet for an investor than a 30-year-old.
Precisely. The data shows that lived experience translates directly into business resilience. A comprehensive study by the J.P. Morgan Chase Institute looked at 138,000 small businesses.
Okay.
And they discovered that in the first year of operation, a 60-year-old entrepreneur's company has an 8.2% probability of going out of business.
8.2%. Got it.
Right. Now compare that to a 30-year-old founder whose failure rate is 11.1%. And that gap in survival rates persists over a 3-year period. Older founders are simply building more stable, enduring businesses.
So, if the math is that clear and older founders are so much more successful, why does our culture still obsess over the under 30 tech genius? Are we just, blinded by a few famous outliers?
We absolutely are. The media loves a prodigy story because it feels magical. It is exciting to think about someone inventing the future from scratch in their dorm room.
Sure, it makes a great movie.
Right. But the reality of building a sustainable, profitable business doesn't rely on magic. It relies heavily on deep industry knowledge, high emotional intelligence, and rigorous financial prudence.
And you just can't fake that.
No, you cannot hack experience. Those are qualities that naturally compound over decades of life. Which, I think, brings us to the core motivation here. Why take on the immense stress of a startup at age 75 in the first place?
Right, because let's be honest, starting a business is grueling work. It is not a walk in the park.
Definitely not.
The senior techie emphasizes a fascinating point here. The motivation usually comes down to a collision of choice and necessity. And, well, the necessity side of the equation is genuinely sobering.
It is.
20% of Americans, 50 and older, have zero retirement savings. Zero.
That is a terrifying statistic.
It really is. And 61% are terrified they will outlive whatever money they do have.
We have to acknowledge that the financial landscape for retirement has shifted drastically beneath people's feet. Americans now estimate they need about $1.26 million to retire comfortably.
1.26 million, that is a huge number.
And that target is up significantly just in the last few years. For a massive segment of the population entering their 70s, the math simply never worked out.
Because things changed so much, right?
Yeah, we moved away from guaranteed pensions toward 401k plans, shifting all the market risk onto the individual. Meanwhile, the cost of living skyrocketed. So for many of these older founders, launching a startup isn't just a fun passion project. It is a necessary strategy for financial survival.
That is the part that gives me pause, honestly. It feels like a double-edged sword. On one hand, it's incredibly inspiring that millions want to build a legacy or solve a social issue.
Absolutely.
But on the other hand, isn't it a bit concerning that so many have to do this just to survive a retirement math problem that didn't work out?
It is a very complex reality, and your concern is completely valid. The financial pressure is undeniable. However, the resulting wave of senior-led innovation is genuinely transforming industries for the better.
That's true. Some amazing companies are coming out of this.
And it is important to note that necessity doesn't tell the whole story. Even those who are financially secure are jumping into these waters. A UPS survey found that 65% of Americans were interested in starting a business in retirement.
65%? That's way more than I would have guessed.
Right. And a massive study by Encore.org and MetLife revealed that 31 million Americans aged 50 and older want what they call encore careers. They are actively looking for opportunities that blend generating an income with making a tangible, lasting social impact.
The social impact piece makes a lot of sense. By the time you reach your 60s or 70s, you've spent a lifetime watching certain systems fail.
Yes, you've seen where the cracks are.
Right. You have a deep desire to leave a legacy, to actually fix the things you know are fundamentally broken.
That is spot on. Cal Halverson, an associate professor of social work at Washington University in St. Louis, explains the mechanics of this beautifully.
What does he say?
He points out that older entrepreneurs have a distinct structural advantage. They can leverage years of contacts, deep operational experience, and hard-won industry knowledge. A 25-year-old simply hasn't been on the planet long enough to build a 40-year Rolodex of trusted contacts.
That network is huge.
It really is a massive protective moat for a new business.
And it shows in the types of businesses they build. When you look at the case studies the senior techie provides, these folks aren't inventing, trivial social media apps or chasing crypto fads.
No, they are solving real-world issues.
Exactly. Absolutely. They are attacking deep systemic problems they've personally suffered through. Take Charlotte Bishop, for example.
Charlotte Bishop's story perfectly illustrates this. She never planned to be a tech entrepreneur. She spent over 40 years in academia, ultimately serving as a tenured professor and chair of the Office Administration Department at Borough of Manhattan Community College.
So she understood administrative systems better than anyone.
Yes, her whole career was built on organization and administration.
But then life happened. After she retired, she spent 9 years helping her mother navigate a complex illness following a stroke. And during that incredibly stressful decade, Charlotte experienced firsthand the absolute nightmare of managing personal and medical records.
It's something so many families go through. It's just chaos.
It is. She saw how chaotic it becomes when families are in crisis. But friends and neighbors saw how she systemized her mother's care, and they kept asking her to help them organize their own documents.
She recognized a desperate, unaddressed need. The system was failing families. So she launched Life Files Professionals. It is a comprehensive records management and professional organizing company.
And she does this for a pretty broad demographic now, right?
She does. She serves New York City residents, small businesses, and government agencies. She goes in and builds secure digital storage systems, assists older adults with the overwhelming process of downsizing, and she intentionally offers special rates to seniors and veterans.
The incredible part to me is how she operates. She runs this entire business from her desk.
Right, no huge corporate lease.
Yeah, no rented commercial real estate, no miserable commute, just bringing order to chaos from her own home. She has been running the company successfully for over a decade. It is the perfect example of baking the problem into your DNA. She lived the pain, so she knew how to build the cure.
Charlotte solved the problem by digitizing personal administrative chaos. But, what happens when the broken system involves physical, human labor, and massive corporate overhead?
That is a much tougher nut to crack.
It is. And that brings us to George Koenig. George spent 22 years running a licensed, accredited home care agency.
22 years, wow.
Yeah, and over 2 decades, he watched a fundamentally broken system grind people down. He saw families getting financially crushed by exorbitant agency fees, while the actual caregivers doing the hard work were getting squeezed by the massive commissions those agencies took.
Right, because the agencies had to pay for office space, administrative staff, marketing. All that overhead was passed on to the families and taken from the caregivers.
It's a lose-lose situation.
George saw a terrifying trend. The cost of care was pushing way beyond the average person's ability to afford it. So, at age 70, instead of just complaining about it, George launched a tech platform called eCaregivers.
Which is brilliant.
It directly connects families with private pay care providers, entirely cutting out the agency middleman.
The mechanism of how eCaregivers works is so smart because it uses technology to replace that massive agency overhead. The platform handles GPS-verified clock-ins, so families know precisely when a caregiver arrives.
Oh, that's huge for peace of mind.
Absolutely. It conducts comprehensive background checks, it automates all the payments, and even allows families to split the billing among multiple adult children.
Which eliminates so much family friction. Arguing over who pays for mom's care is a nightmare.
Right. It takes that stress completely off the table. And because the software replaces the agency, the care providers get to keep 100% of their earnings.
And the scale of what he built is wild. They already have over 11,000 care providers nationwide on the platform.
11,000. That is a massive network.
It is. And families can join the network in under 10 minutes for as little as $9.99 a month.
I like that.
The estimated savings for these families is 30 to 50% compared to traditional agency costs.
That is life-changing money for a family paying for full-time care.
This is what 22 years of watching a broken system looks like when someone finally says, I have the tools to fix this. A younger founder might try to disrupt home care without understanding the emotional nuance of hiring a stranger to bathe your mother. George understood every single pain point intimately.
That intimate understanding is the ultimate competitive advantage. And we see this apply to highly specialized professional services as well. Transitioning from physical care to the legal system, we have Judson Vaughn and Judson Graves.
2 attorneys in their 70s, both named Judson.
Which is fantastic branding right out of the gate.
It really is. One is an actor and filmmaker. The other actually has a prestigious prize named after him for excellence in trial practice.
The very distinguished pair.
Yeah, and after decades in the legal field, they both came to the same conclusion. Most trial lawyers are, in their own words, boring as hell.
Which is such a funny observation, but it's so true. They realize that you can have the best legal argument in the world, but if you put a jury to sleep, you lose.
Right. The presentation matters just as much as the facts.
So they launched Judson Squared. It is an online training company designed specifically to teach lawyers how to be both entertaining and effective in the courtroom.
That is an incredibly smart niche.
It is the kind of business idea that can only originate from someone who has suffered through decades of tedious legal performances and realize there absolutely has to be a better way to communicate.
They just use technology as a wrench to fix a problem they've known about for 40 years. It's like, this is the ultimate competitive advantage. Instead of trying to invent a problem to fit a fancy new technology, they have the problem baked into their DNA.
Well said.
But that brings up a really important logistical question. It's one thing to know your industry inside and out, but it's another to completely shift how you operate.
Oh, the learning curve.
Yeah. Moving from boardrooms and physical offices to running a fully remote tech infrastructure from a laptop is a massive pivot. I love that the technology is finally accessible, but doesn't it still take a massive leap of faith for someone in their 70s to trust running their entire livelihood through Zoom and Stripe from their kitchen table?
That is the million-dollar question. 20 years ago, if George wanted to launch eCaregivers, he would have needed to hire a team of developers for $100,000 just to build the scheduling software.
Right, you'd need servers, IT staff, commercial real estate.
Today, the landscape is totally different. Donna Kelly from Babson College summed it up perfectly when she said, technology has flattened the runway.
Flatten the runway, I like that.
You don't need a massive IT department or millions in venture capital anymore. The barrier to entry went from a brick wall to a tiny speed bump.
And the senior techie details exactly how these tools have democratized business ownership for seniors. Instead of hiring a web developer, you can build a beautiful professional website for incredibly low cost using platforms like Squarespace or Wix.
Right, you don't need to know a single line of computer code.
No, you just drag and drop the images where you want them.
And for managing operations, the tools are just as accessible. Instead of playing endless phone tag to set up meetings, you use a tool like Calendly that lets clients book appointments directly on your calendar.
And marketing has completely changed too.
Oh, absolutely. You don't need to buy expensive billboard ads or radio spots. You use free channels like Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube to target your specific niche audience. If you have a product-based business, e-commerce platforms like Etsy and Shopify make selling globally incredibly simple.
And for the financial side, which, used to be a nightmare of merchant accounts and bank approvals, you can use a platform like Stripe.
Stripe is amazing for small businesses.
It is. For those who aren't familiar, Stripe is essentially the invisible plumbing of the internet. It securely processes credit card payments 24/7 in the background, meaning you can accept payments from anyone, anywhere, while you sleep.
Which is incredible when you think about it.
The massive benefit to seniors here is that the entire operational infrastructure of a business marketing, scheduling, billing, and fulfillment now fits into a few browser tabs on a laptop at the kitchen table.
You can literally run a nationwide company from your kitchen table. But what makes these older founders so uniquely successful with these tools is their financial discipline.
What do you mean?
Well, the J.P. Morgan Chase study we mentioned earlier found a critical detail. Older founders typically carry 17 cash buffer days of operating expenses compared to just 12 days for founders under 35.
Let me make sure I have this right. Cash buffer days, meaning how many days the business could survive paying its bills if all revenue suddenly dropped to zero today.
Correct.
Okay, so 17 days versus 12. That doesn't sound like a huge difference at first glance.
Those 5 extra days might not sound like much, but cash crunches are the leading reason startups fail. They simply run out of money before they figure out the business model.
Oh, I see. It's the buffer that keeps them alive.
It is the difference between making payroll and closing your doors forever. Older founders are much better at managing their resources. They don't run out of cash. They don't burn through it unnecessarily.
They aren't renting out the flashy downtown office or throwing an expensive marketing launch party.
No, they build solid, stable businesses that stick around.
They aren't chasing some mythical unicorn status. They are building reliable workhorses that actually solve problems.
Which is exactly what the economy needs.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? Whether you are in your 60s, 70s, or beyond, or if you are supporting a family member in that demographic, this is an incredibly empowering shift in how we view aging and productivity.
It truly is. The ultimate takeaway from all the data and stories the senior techie shared is this. If you have spent decades watching a specific problem go unsolved in your industry or your community, that observation is not a coincidence.
No, it's not.
It is a credential. You understand the nuances, the friction points, and the human cost of that problem better than anyone.
You don't need to fly out to San Francisco to pitch venture capitalists. You don't even necessarily need a co-founder.
You just need a specific problem, a group of people who are suffering from that problem, and a way to solve it that you understand deeply.
And the tools are right there on your laptop.
The traditional retirement script assumed your working life had a hard stop. You hit 65, you get a gold watch, and you're done contributing.
Right. Time to just watch the grandkids or play pickleball.
But as we've seen today, for a rapidly growing number of older Americans, that hard stop is actually just a pivot. A pivot into work that is more meaningful, more flexible, and entirely on their own terms. They are taking their lifetime of experience and turning it into their greatest asset.
I think that is a perfect place to wrap up. Think about your own life. What broken system, frustrating process, or annoying inefficiency have you been complaining about for the last 20 years? Because right now, you have the tools to fix it, and the data proves you're the most qualified person to do it.
This podcast was brought to you by The Senior Techie. It's available on Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and Spotify. If you'd like to receive their free newsletters, you can subscribe by going to subscribe.theseniortechie.com.